Hi, I'm Ash and welcome to this review of the Naish Chimera. The boards in this review are the 88 litre and the 68 litre. These have dimensions of 6'3" by 21.2 inches by 5.3 inches and 6 foot by 19.8 inches by 4.6 inches. The review for this was done in Greece in Karpathos, and there are videos on my channel explaining why I went to Karpathos and my role at the Naish event, which was basically as an independent reviewer. The Chimera comes in quite a few sizes: 38 litre, 48 litre, 53, 58, 68, 78, 88, 108, 128 and 148 litre, so a lot of sizes. The construction is a carbon PVC sandwich foam core. No mention in the documentation whether this is hydrophobic foam or not. I'm going to assume that it isn't, given that it's not mentioned. We have a slightly recessed deck. The deck pad is very nice, not too thick, still very comfortable to kneel on and provides a good grip. The board is very much in the longer, narrower end of mid-lengths. Compared to a Skybrid, for example, it is both longer and narrower. The board has a rocker line that is more pronounced at the front to lift the nose and less so at the rear. We have a surf style nose, quite pointed, but no extra volume up front like some boards. The bevels are fairly angled in to narrow the bottom profile, which presumably is designed to narrow the waterline as the foil starts to lift. We have a progressive pinch to the tail and then it squares off. The board is a planing hull design rather than displacement. In terms of board features, we have an automatic pressure equalization valve, foot strap inserts for offset or inline. The mast track is quite generous, and note there is an underside carry handle that fits the whole hand. The board itself is a painted finish rather than an epoxy resin finish, so expect some paint scratches and wear and tear to show with use. The graphics design is an understated grey, black, white type design. I find it a little bit dull, if I'm honest. I prefer my boards to be colourful and easy to spot in the water, but this is of course all personal preference. Naish tout this as a one board all-purpose design for wing, parawing, foil assist, downwind and tow. They don't mention prone. Okay, let's get this on the water and we'll start out with pump on foil. I found the volume of this board in the 68 litre to be slightly over what I was expecting, and the 88 litre slightly under what I was expecting. The 88 litre, which you can see here, sunk slightly below the surface on the tail with the nose pointing out the water. The moment we got a tiny bit of forward momentum, the board is on the surface. I was kind of expecting a bit more float from an 88 litre. The 68 litre felt slightly over volume compared to my Swift foiling 68 litre. I weigh 83 kilos, so you can judge for yourself the way they float under my weight. In terms of stability, the board is quite narrow, and so as you would expect there is a little bit of roll, and because there is an extra volume up front in the nose of the board, it is free to sink either the nose or the tail. This wasn't as bad as on the North Midi, which was very easy to sink the nose, but it was less forgiving than the Skybrid, which has a little extra volume up front. There is a little bit of rail tracking due to the waterline length and the narrow outline. Overall, it was very easy to power onto foil, easier than the North Midi or indeed the Skybrid. So for pump onto foil, there is really very little to complain about. This shape does tend to sit more towards the light wind board length and width, and as a result it gets up and away very easily. Once up on foil, it's a little heavier in feeling than the Skybrid and quite similar to the North Midi, which was also quite nice on foil. You do notice the little extra bit of length, but you soon forget about it as there is not a huge amount of swing weight. The 88 litre was quite nimble for its size, and the 68 litre felt very similar to my swift falling 68 litre in terms of response and ride. This made the Chimera very easy to adapt to for me. The only fly in the ointment was that the test board was not fitted with foot straps, so for this test I had to run strapless, which is a little uncomfortable for me, but it didn't affect the testing too much. Foot swaps were the main battle as I had no strap to aim for, which is what I'm used to. In terms of overall feel, I quite like it. It isn't super light, but it's not heavy either. The length isn't too noticeable, and the touchdowns were straightforward and drama free. In terms of stiffness, the new thing is full length carbon stringers in boards, and boards that do have a certain directness of feel about them. That is missing from the Chimera. In terms of who this board is aimed at, then I would say it's quite broad. The board isn't narrow enough to make it difficult for a beginner. Someone who jumps would probably want something a bit shorter, but overall for free ride the shape is good. It provides a quick accelerate onto foil and it's easy to use. The only thing being that you need to be careful not to sink the nose during takeoff. I did put the board through the usual paces, jibes, tacks, backwind riding, and it was very compliant throughout. It goes where you point it and it has a relatively stiff feel to the board, with almost no times that I thought the board was doing its own thing. I could probably have coped with a little extra deck scallop, but the deck was overall okay and the deck pad was comfortable. Not much to complain about here. I think my main gripes would be the paint job being a bit dull, and I would have preferred a little extra nose volume to make sinking the nose less of a concern as well. So let's get into some pros and cons. The pros would be that the board is beginner through to expert friendly. It comes in a very large array of sizes. It gets onto foil very easily, better than a Skybrid or the North Midi. It's reactive enough to be fun to ride. The Skybrid is a little bit more reactive, mainly due to being lighter I think, and it handles touchdowns well. In terms of cons, a bit more nose volume would have been nice. The width means it's a little less roll stable than some wider boards, and also it's a painted board, which means it may show signs of wear and tear over time. So who's this board for? Well, this is a very versatile board that comes in many different sizes, so it has an appeal from beginner right through to expert. It rides well and has decent performance, so performance riders should absolutely take a look. It can be applied to multiple disciplines, and I agree with Naish's assessment that it could be used for wing, parawing, foil assist, tow, downwind, or even prone in the smaller sizes. I think the only category I would have issue with is freestyle, as it's a little bit lengthy. Overall, the Chimera is a decent board and delivers a well-rounded and performance-orientated ride, and is definitely a step in the right direction to appeal to today's riders. Mid-length is still very much the buzzword and preferred shape, and this sits nicely in that category. I'd like to thank Alex from Naish UK for inviting me to Greece to ride and test the Chimera, and I'll see you on the next video.